any sensitive information relating to this submission that cannot be disclosed publicly, you can provide that to the committee in writing or in a closed session. But this is going to be limited to only a few things, including matters relating to national security, third-party confidential information, personnel or human resource matters, and also during the time when the committee sits in closed session to deliberate and develop our reports back to Parliament. Thank you, honourable members. We are going to be taking questions from the public via the Facebook live feed, but I just want to ask that members of the public, if you want to ask questions of our submittees today, please put your comments or your questions in the comment section, and relevant questions will be considered by the committee. Just want to remind all present that this is a parliamentary proceeding, and all information provided is protected under the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act and the Standing Orders of Parliament. Slander or libel of any kind will not be condoned, and I just ask that you please mute your phones and limit moving around as the cameras are also on. I now introduce to you the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and Defence, starting with Deputy Chair, Honourable Rinesh Sharma, Honourable Penyoni Raunawa, Honourable Virendra Lal, and Honourable Taito Rokumatu. Dileite, representing Hansard, is sitting to your extreme left, and to my right here are Tiri and Katie, members of the Secretariat. So to the members of the public, the committee is going to be receiving an in-person submission from the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change in relation to the review of the agreement to establish the Pacific Resilience Facility. I now invite the Permanent Secretary to introduce your team before you proceed with your submission. You have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable members of the Standing Committee of Foreign Affairs and Defense. With me this morning is Mr. Denzel, who is our Senior Oceans Officer for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change under the Department of Environment. Again, Bulavinaka, and good morning to you all. I would like to start by thanking the committee for the invitation to appear before you today to address the agreement to establish the PRF, the Pacific Resilience Facility. I do so with a profound sense of responsibility and with pride as well, because this is not merely a treaty. This is Fiji's opportunity to help build a Pacific-owned, Pacific-led solution to the greatest threat to our existence that our region has ever faced. I wish to begin by placing this agreement in its proper context. For decades, Pacific Island countries have been navigating a paradox. We are on the front lines of climate change. We contribute almost nothing to global emissions, yet we bear the heaviest of the burden. And when we seek climate finance for adaptation, for disaster recovery, for addressing loss and damage, we encounter systems that are not designed for us, for the Pacific, for our economies and societies. The processes are slow, they are complex, they are also very expensive to access. They're administered by teams that are based thousands of kilometers away on very different time zones, and by officials that have never experienced life in the Pacific and who do not understand our needs and our context. Honorable members, the Pacific Resilience Facility was born out of the Pacific leaders' vision to offer an alternative and their drive to ensure our needs will not continue to be overlooked and misconstructed. To be clear, the PRF is not a replacement of global climate funds. It is complementary. It is designed to do what global systems cannot: deliver simplified, contextualized, rapid and affordable financing directly to our communities, our national governments, and our local civil society on terms through our governance and in accordance with our values. Let me be brutally honest. Fiji's accession to this treaty is overwhelming in our national interest. Why? Firstly, it is in our financial interest that the PRF is structured to provide grants, not loans, for climate adaptation, disaster preparedness, nature-based solutions, and loss and damage. For a country like Fiji, which faces repeated cyclones, flooding, and coastal inundation, this is not abstract. This is about rebuilding schools in the northern fast. This is about restoring water supplies in the Western Division within weeks and not months. And this is about community-led resilience projects that do not require 30 pages of application forms written in technical English. Honorable members, the PRF has not received the support of the Pacific, has not only received the support of the Pacific region and has established through the collective decision of Pacific leaders, it has also received significant backing from a range of development partners. Approximately 172 million USD has been committed to date from 13 development partners from within and outside our region. This is finance that is already ready to be deployed to support the most vulnerable. It reflects both financial and political support from our key development partners. Why do I want to say this? Every treaty negotiation that your Pacific delegation goes to, that Fiji goes to, we continuously fight for SEEDs and the special circumstances for SEEDs and LDCs. What does it mean? How long can we continue fighting for special circumstances for SEEDs and LDCs when it's not operationalized? We ask global conventions to operationalize. What does it mean? For example, in our ministry, we look at biodiversity funds that are given from Global Environmental Facility. The SEEDs, which is 39 member countries collectively, we access 1% of the total funds that have been allocated to the region or through the Global Environmental Facility. Again, 1% for SEEDs only. LDCs have a bigger share, that's fine. But what does it mean to operationalize SEEDs? And this is why the physical protection is very important, which is my second point. Article 5C of the treaty explicitly provides that no PRF member shall be liable for the acts, omissions, or obligations of the PRF. Fiji assumes no financial or legal liability by joining. There is no drain on our national budget unless we choose to contribute, and even then, only as a pathway to access funding. Our physical position is fully safeguarded. Third, institutional strengthening. The PRF's mandate is to support capacity building in public financial management, resilient development planning, and budgeting. So again, this is not a burden, it is an investment in our national system. It aligns with our national planning goals, in line with our international standards, and it also strengthens our ability to absorb and manage climate finance from all sources. And lastly, regional leadership. Honorable members, Fiji has long been a voice for the Pacific. We have chaired the UNFCCC COP, the first small island developing state to host or to be presidency for the COP. We also have hosted the Pacific Islands Forum. We have championed the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. And to be absent from the founding membership of the PRF would be a retreat from that leadership. It would be inconsistent with our foreign policy narrative. It would diminish our influence at the very moment when Pacific solidarity matters most. Honorable members, Fiji has advocated alongside our Pacific members and wider family for small island developing states for the finance required to address loss and damage brought by climate change since the 1990s. Fiji convened the Suva Expert Dialogue on Loss and Damage ahead of hosting COP23, highlighting the major ongoing deficit in support for climate impacts we cannot adequately adapt to. We have put the motion that the world's first national legislative and policy framework, processes and financing mechanisms for support and planned relocation for communities, which is our Climate Change Act. Under the UNFCCC, it is clear it took us 28 years to bring Loss and Damage Fund into fruition, on the 29th year for it to be operationalized. And our voice within UNFCCC negotiations over the last decade directed national formal submissions and membership to the Transitional Committee tasked with Pacific SEEDs, in particular Fiji and Cook Islands, were tasked to be part of the Advisory Council to set up the new international fund for addressing loss and damage. And this leadership as SEEDs member, we are currently in the board for the fund for responding to loss and damage that has directly contributed to the recognition of the need of funds in our country through a process like this. Why am I telling you this? Because the Pacific Resilience Facility, as a direct result of our efforts, is recognized in the global COP28 decision as the governing instrument of this new global fund, as an example of a regional mechanism that is equipped to support national loss and damage response. We are invested in not only PRF, but in the larger evolving financial architecture within which we must function. So lastly, in terms of just a few more points in terms of addressing our implementation obligations, the committee has rightly asked about legal, policy and institutional implications, and I will address them accordingly. Legally, ratification will require Parliament approval under Section 51 of the 2013 Constitution. This committee's own review is critical part of that process, and upon ratification, we must recognize PRF's legal personality and capacity. This is routine, and we have done it for other international obligations and international organizations such as the BBNJ. This is also an enabling mechanism that is for Diplomatic Privileges and Immunities Act in 1971. Again, I would like to let members of the public know that this is standard practice and this is not a novel burden. Operationally, Fiji will be required to use PRF funds strictly in accordance with the facilities rules and report transparently on their use. Honorable members, this is not an imposition, it is accountability. It is what we already do for our national budget. It is what we already do for Green Climate Fund projects. It is what we already do for World Bank and ADB programs. And institutionally, the Ministry of Finance will be the designate representative to the PRF Council, normally the Minister of Finance. This is appropriate given the financial nature of the decisions. Other agencies, including but not limited to the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, Ministry of Rural, Disaster Management Office, and community development bodies will be engaged in the project implementation. This requires coordination, and I will not minimize that. But coordination should not be a barrier. It should be a function of an effective government, and we already coordinate across cyclones, floods, and public health emergencies. We can further coordinate to build resilience and strategize access to finance through the Climate Change Act and the oversight function of the National Climate Change Coordination Committee, which is a legislated body under the Climate Change Act. So we have the formal mandate and the structure to do so. Some colleagues and some submissions, I heard questions on whether granting privileges and immunities to the PRF represents an issue for Fiji. Privileges and immunities are not about elevating an organization above the state. They are about enabling an international organization to function independently and without improper interference. Fiji grants these immunities to United Nations, to diplomatic missions, and to regional bodies. We do so because we understand that for an organization to serve its member states effectively, it must be protected from litigation and physical disruption. The PRF is no different. These immunities are standard and they are limited and they are necessary. Inclusivity. I wish to respond to the recent media article in which civil society has claimed that the structure of PRF is not inclusive. I want to be clear that the PRF exists to empower community action and enable direct investment that by default requires the involvement and direct implementation capacity of civil society organizations and NGOs. Indeed, as civil society has recognized, here in Fiji we have taken forward an open dialogue at the national level to inform our approach to the PRF, and we are committed to continuing that internal domestic dialogue. The core issue highlighted by civil society is around representation in the governance of the PRF and the potential to input into the governance decisions. All I would say at this stage is that we should not prejudge arrangements that are being developed and recognize that this is a new fund that is born out of an international treaty that must in the first instance clarify and formalize the political support and ratification of member governments. The co-design consultations will take place with CSOs with a regional CSO workshop earmarked for the 16th of March, with national consultations to follow with forum member countries from March to May 2026, which will include consultations with various arms of governments, CSOs, CBOs, private sector, and subnational, regional, and international partners. The governance spaces have been designed in a way that community voices will be heard at the council level, similar to the Pacific Leaders Meeting and the Forum Economic Ministerial Meeting, Partners Dialogue, and at the board level through advisory panels where representation will be inclusive to ensure that the delivery of the PRF mandate. Honorable members, I must also address the alternative. If Fiji were not to proceed with the ratification of the PRF treaty, the operationalization of the facility will still proceed. 7 foreign member countries plus Tonga are required for entry into force. That threshold will be met. The PRF will be established. It will operate. Its headquarters will be in Tonga. Its board will still make decisions. Its funds will still be deployed. The question is not whether PRF exists. The question is whether Fiji has a seat on the table. If we are not members, we cannot influence its rules, we cannot shape its investment policies, and we cannot nominate directors to its first board. We cannot ensure that our national priorities, our adaptation needs, our disaster response timelines, or our community development models that CSOs are continuously advocating for are reflected in its operations. So in ratifying this treaty, we become recipients, benefits, and shareholders in the institutional evolution and capital growth of the PRF, and will also directly benefit from its long-term investments and mandate to provide grants to the most vulnerable communities in Fiji, those that desperately need it. To conclude, the agreement to establish the PRF is not perfect. No treaty has ever been perfect. But it is Pacific owned, it is Pacific led, and it is designed for our context. It protects our physical protection, it advances our national priorities, and it strengthens our regional influence. Importantly, it seeks to create financial modalities that directly provide grants for community resilience building. Just 2 weeks ago, we just launched the Narata project, in fact last week, and before that we launched Madhuwata UI. These are examples of direct access modalities that we have fought so hard for. This focus on real impact on the ground at grassroots levels is what we have continued to struggle to deliver through the ill-fitting international financial architecture we must engage with. The PRF will help to crowd in finance for our region and help provide us with reliable and predictable flow of grant-based financing for resilience building. It will allow our region to invest in capital markets and grow the capital base for the PRF, creating a model that has the potential to become self-sustaining over time. In the absence of a dedicated Pacific Regional Development Bank, the value and importance of PRF is clear. I am aware that some have raised concerns about the pace of the process to establish the PRF. Yes, it has taken us more than 7 years, and we are proud that we have been part of this journey all throughout. But the implications of immunities, about the obligations of membership, I have sought to address each of these concerns directly to your knowledge. But let me close with this. Fiji should not join the PRF or any other regional initiative simply because we are compelled to. We must join it because we believe in it, we stand ready to promote it, and we are ready to assist in the process of developing and evolving it. We join because our communities need faster, simpler, fairer access to climate finance. We join because we refuse to accept that the Pacific should be a passive recipient of decisions made elsewhere. We join because the 2050 strategy is not a document to be admired at. It is a blueprint to be implemented. I commend this treaty to the committee, and I urge your support for the existing agreement and processes towards national ratification of the treaty. And I thank you for the opportunity to present our ministry's assessment. Vinaka Vakalevu, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, PS Michael. Can you just turn your microphone off? Thank you very, very much for speaking to this PRF with such passion and, of course, very deep knowledge. I don't know if the committee has any questions, but just as, you talked about a 30-page application form that has to be filled with technical language, for us to understand the difference between that sort of application and Madhuwata Wai and the simplicity with which they can apply for funding. Naka.
Thank you, Honorable Madam Chairperson. So I give you an example on GCF applications. So 30-page application that we are talking about for GCF, our minimum project application that has been done so far is a regional project for 18 months. For national projects, currently we have 2 projects that are submitted to the board for their review. These are more than 1,000 pages in writing, more than 1,000 pages in submission. It's taken us 7 years to get there. And so we are looking at a GCF application, which is, yes, 44 million, but it has taken us that long to develop because of the amount of assessments we have to do at our national cost in order to apply for these funds. And of course, we have to have implementing partners. So that means the institutions that have the capacity, like the UN, like ADB, like World Bank, to meet all the criterion to become an implementing partner. And then the government and the local communities are executing agencies. With the PRF, the model is different. And with Madhuwata EY, for example, for the Climate Communities Adaptation Fund, which is the CCAF, which is a direct access 100,000 USD fund that Madhuwata EY, Vuninyun Rovu, and Narata has got access to, the application was 12 pages. So 12 pages of an application, and we had 2 annexes, which was community consultations and also indigenous knowledge and indigenous and traditional knowledge. The reason why we had the indigenous traditional knowledge is because we wanted the implementers of the project were the community themselves. It was not the government. So the funds, the government helped prepare the submissions for all 3 projects. We then sat in the panel. Those that were helping with the preparation of the project proposals were not allowed to be in the panel for consideration. It was a multi-stakeholder panel, including civil society, also including the private sector. We assessed it, and 3 were nominated. There were 6 applications received, and all 3 that were nominated have now been will receive their 100,000. Similarly, we just launched the Climate Catalytic Fund with IOM just 2 weeks ago. At the Suva Yacht Club. This is up to 25,000 USD, and the application is no more than 12 to 15 pages as well. The reason is because the assessors need to understand the context, and sometimes these assessors are not from the Pacific. So it's sometimes some of the information they require is like the gender social safeguards, which in our interpretation is very different compared to their interpretation. So I think this was very important for us to make this direct access really happen, and PRF also models the same approach.
You mentioned nature-based solutions. How much will the nature-based solutions part of the PRF help with women? I know that the Ministry of Women will be very interested in nature-based solutions in terms of supporting women.
Yes, so basically the way that PRF will work is it's going to have the respective thematic areas. So if Fiji's priority is going to be infrastructure, because of the schools, the upgrade of the roads and the seawalls that we have to build, then the legwork or the feasibility has to be done before the application. So for example, currently we have a list of, in agriculture submission, I had more than 160 communities that have expressed the need for seawalls. And for them, we have, what Ministry of Agriculture and Waterways does is they do the feasibility assessment for each of this. And then they have a priority list. So again, we have many learnings. One of the things that we've learned from this process, honorable members, is sometimes we say nature-based solutions, but it does not work because a full nature-based solutions probably is not the solution given the impacts of climate change or the direction or the change of tides. So we have to sometimes do the different approaches, sometimes half concrete, half nature, full concrete, and then with nature around it. So for Fiji, we have 4 models under the Ministry of Agriculture and Waterways, and they look at these models. And we have learned from experience. For example, in one ADB project, we have secured grant for 10 seawalls. But when we went and do the assessments, it came down to 6 because we learned that the 10 for full nature-based would not work. So the reassessments have helped us understand. And then from the priority list, we pick those that are. And to answer the question of women, I think this is where the gender and social safeguards component is really important, that their consultation is done. I have had a discussion with the Ministry of Women myself, is most we must acknowledge that we lack the in-depth understanding of the roles of women and girls and even the youth in the project implementation phase or the project design phase. So what does core design look like would be dependent on the country that submits the application. So if we are going to submit the application, we must know that we are not doing it in a tokenistic manner. We must consult with the women separately and the young people separately to rightfully understand what their roles will be in the process of the application. And I think that's one of our biggest learning gaps, I would say, because so often the time pressure is that the timeline is there, we need to apply and we don't do it properly. And then we come back to implementation and we say, where is the young people? Where is the ones that could have done this project? Because we are getting contractors that are coming to do this work, and then there's no pre-agreements with the contractors on how the young people could have been involved better, or the women could have been. So I think these are all the learnings that we have to integrate in our submissions when the call for applications are made. Thank you.
And just for the information of our honourable members, just wanted to tell you that the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change has been actively listening in on all the submissions that have come before this committee. That's why PS is able to answer questions that have come before the committee from other stakeholders. Denzel, any words from you? Do you want to add anything, or? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members. I would like basically just to reiterate what Dr. Sivendra Michael has said. From an oceans perspective, our communities depend on coastal resilience and marine ecosystems, and it can be underfunded at times. We access support from several multilateral international facilities, and these are spread out across different systems, often leading to fragmentation. So I think that the PRF is particularly important in this. It's Pacific led, as Dr. Michael has mentioned, it's Pacific owned, and it's tailored to Pacific context. So accessing the support for these projects is really important. Something else to consider is there are several international mechanisms that are still under development with reference to, such as the BBNJ agreement that's still under development. So PRF could really be like, how would you say, like it could stand in until the process has been developed and be really complementary to the process. And the PRF would also help Fiji to strengthen its regional resilience. And it will ensure that we are well positioned to engage with future global mechanisms as they become operational, as I mentioned. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Denzel. Any questions from the committee members? Or any comments?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I thank the PS for listening to all our previous questions that were asked to different submittees that have come earlier on. I did mention about the diplomatic immunity clause. You did mention about the having the headquarters for PRF in Nuku'alofa in Tonga. My one question that I asked the previous committee is the Pacific Island Forum and the PIDF here in Fiji. That's my one question. And my other question is the access to this PRF. Will it be by priority or will it be by project proposal, implementation, and closure?
Thank you, Honorable Member. My understanding of PIDF is that its institutional mandate was created outside the PIF's leaders process. So the reason why PRF is sitting currently as a standalone entity, because it came through the Pacific Islands Forum leaders process, and that is a process that's under the Pacific Islands Forum. And so with PIDF, because of its institutional structure and how it came to being, there is no correlation on its setup, the process of setup. So my understanding is that this is why PIDF as as an institution exists, and I also feel that the capacity assessments and the structures, like who is the membership in the PIDF, all of those factors were considered as well in its original analysis. In terms of your latter question, I think it's quite clear that that the and this is when we were doing the treaty negotiations to draft the rules. We were very active, Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Environment, Climate Change, and the Solicitor General's office. And one of the things that we also asked about was the associate membership, because there are other countries outside the Pacific, 14 Pacific member states that are part of Forum that also would like to be part of so I would say that the pie will not be evenly shared. It will be shared upon the priorities and the submission of the proposals. Supposedly, say for example, if this call for application round is on infrastructure, we would have massive applications from all Pacific Island countries. And so it would be based on the assessment of the committee and those that have immediate priorities for them to be able to access first. And I think this is where our VUVALE or our Pacific solidarity really comes in. For example, if Tuvalu is at the risk of losing a complete, foreshore area that needs reclamation work that has been sitting and unfunded for the last 12 years, then Tuvalu would probably be getting the first funds, and then the others will get also prioritized based on their submission. So every application will be assessed thoroughly, and there are two components that's really important. So the PRF governing body, in our understanding, has the council. The council is the most top decision maker, and it is made up of each of the member countries' finance minister. And then there's the board. So the board is the one that independently will review all the applications, and it has it is appointed by the members itself. And I think for me this is very important, because as a PS, and I like to talk about this, because this is where we really talk about the political separation. So separate the political oversight, which is the council, and the distinct day-to-day management of the board. And I think this is where we can actually play to our advantage our advisory roles and advise our honorable ministers of finance that this is how we came about to prioritize these projects.
Honorable Sharma, then Honorable Lal.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, yes, thank you, PS. Received aid to the country is basically a complements the national budget, fills in the gaps that probably government has issues or are unable to, the government at the end of the day. So, PS, is there any data on the amount of aid that has come into Fiji? I'm just concerned for Fiji. Is there any data that that highlights of the funding that has come into the country and has complemented? Obviously, donors look at how we would like to fund whatever government is trying to achieve and fill the gaps. And how, if this data exists, how has it helped? Is it like a race that we are losing out on? Let's just say you have 10 seawalls to be built, but then you discover, oh, this issue is just in this community, in that particular community. So is it a losing race? Are we way behind with the funds that we need to address the climate shocks and impacts in our community? Sort of, where are we?
Thank you, Honorable Sharma, for that question. I think that's a very important question for our members of the public and for all of you to also ask. The OECD does an analysis every year on the amount of funds that are received. For the climate, we have two categories: principal and significant climate finance. Principal is those that are directly related to adaptation and mitigation outcomes, and then significant is those that have co-benefits, which means that you could have ocean finance. By way of information, SDG 14 is the least financed SDG, and oceans is basically our largest source of livelihood and so forth. So basically, for funding for oceans, because it's so piecemeal, it will come under the significant tracking. And so, yes, we have analysis of how much funds have been received, and yes, we are behind the race. Why I say this is because for Fiji, we have costed our climate finance strategy is costed on all the priorities and how much would it cost to finance that. Our climate finance strategy is from 2019 to 2027. And so that's already talked about, for example, all of, and it doesn't look at just, for example, Ministry of Environment Climate Change. It looks at, say, for example, the ports, the road infrastructure, the schools, the medical facilities, and how much it would mean for us to ensure that it is climate resilient or risk proofed. So we have put cost, and the amount of funding that we get from as opposed to the ODA that we receive, as opposed to the amount of funds we need, it's minimal. It's less than, I would say it's less than 10% of the total that we require. And so recently I also, and I'm happy to share this for the committee's referral, we wrote a paper amongst climate finance experts on the effectiveness of the GCF funding in the Pacific context. And why we wrote this paper as Pacific practitioners, and I know even you are the permanent secretary, you want to write this thing because you also experience these challenges. And I will honestly tell you, some nights we are in office at 3-4 a.m. only because we are reviewing a proposal that has comments that the person that has given the comments has never come to Fiji and does not understand what we are going through. And it's so sad to see them ask, why do you need this kind of infrastructure? Or how would it benefit? I mean, have you ever been to Fiji? Have you ever come and seen what we go through? Have you ever seen? So I think these are the ongoing challenges, because ODA as well is based on national priorities, but it is also subject to our economic classification. For Fiji, we are upper middle income country, so the amount of ODA we get is very minimal. And the amount of grant-based funding. So we might get highly concessional loans, but grant financing is very limited. And we know for climate change, we need more grant financing and highly, highly concessional loans. So that part we are very clear. So if I may, I can give you another example on how behind we are. So in COP 29, we had a negotiation track on the new collective quantified goal. So in 2015, if I'm correct, in 2015, when the Paris Agreement came in, we had a goal of 100 billion per year to meet the whole developing countries' climate objectives. From that 100 billion, for Pacific Seeds, we had quoted 1 billion per year per country. Just an example. We did not meet our adaptation goal until 2023. For the first time, we met 100 billion mobilization. So before that, we have never met. And now we are sitting at a 300 billion, which is the new collective quantified goal. And that's how did we come to 300 billion? It's not pulled out of thin air. It's every country that is doing their nationally determined contributions and costing them. So currently Fiji is in the process of costing the new nationally determined contributions that was launched last year, November. And this will be a costed implementation plan for the NDC. So, Honorable Rinesh, to come back to your question on how far behind we are, a real factual check is needed, meaning I have just recently pulled together for information paper for cabinet members on, and we can produce this as an information paper for the committee on how many projects has been brought to Fiji since 2012. So we have a list of every project that has been accessed in Fiji on climate finance that has come to Fiji, and who is the implementing partner and how much money has come in to Fiji. On top of that, you then benchmark that to the nationally determined contributions costed implementation plan. So to see the gap on how much funding needs we have and how much funding needs have been met, that would be the gap that we can talk about in terms of our analysis. But I know that funding is less than 10% of the total funding required that we receive. And for GCF in the Pacific, for 14 Pacific Island countries, we receive less than 1% of the total funding, now increased to 4%. Up after the last board meeting, and with all the recent approvals, it's like about 4.75% of the total funding. So we are still nowhere close to getting the amount of funding that we need. And if I may allow, I think this is something that I'm really, really concerned about as well. Development partners that give us funding, they also want to know how their funding is used, right? Accountability. So at the recent, I just came back from Rome from the negotiations, and one of the negotiation track was on the resource mobilization and financial mechanism. And it was sad to sit in the room to see that the developed countries were still asking us on the effectiveness of spend to because we were designing the terms of reference to assess the effectiveness of the existing Global Biodiversity Fund, which is the Global Biodiversity Financing Framework. We wanted the Secretariat to assess that, but they didn't want to put the use of international consultants as a condition, as a parameter to be assessed. So Fiji made the intervention because if you are really genuine about building our capacity and building the capacities of our national governments and our civil society organizations, then we must know that how much of the funding that has been contributed to our country has actually stayed in our country and has not been paid outside to the consultants that fly in and fly out. So for you to be uncomfortable about that, that's a concern. And I think it's only right that we question this, because if you really want to see how much fund has come, how much has been charged to management fee, how much has been charged to implement the project, how much has actually gone on the ground to make a difference. This is what we want to know, because again, implementing partners is not government. We are executing agencies. We execute the project. Implementing partners are still the IFIs and the UNs in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PS. Honorable Virendra.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, my question is of a similar nature, but before that, I would like to just thank the PS for his comprehensive presentation, and also would like to assure you, we all are for this treaty. We would like to have, no? So my question is in terms of policy. We already have in Fiji the climate change and the disaster resilience policies. My question is, how is the PRF is going to complement this? Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Our response is very simple. So, like I said, we have policies, but the policies have to be translated to national priorities, and we have done that through the National Development Plan for our country. And apart from that, we have the NDC, the Nationally Determined Contributions. So, policy translated into practice is when we are costing how much it would take to implement the priorities in the policy. And the policies are very high level oriented wordings. So you would say, for example, in a national climate change policy is to support blue economy or blue economy interventions. So for that to be operationalized, Fiji just developed the blue economy framework. From the blue economy framework, we will develop the blue economy financing framework, and then we will cost, like how much would it take us to do blue shipping or green shipping, or blue corridors? How much would it be to support the tourism ventures that look at the blue economy initiatives? And then based on that, sir, the PRF is going to be the avenue to submit our proposals on those areas. So you have a climate policy and you have multiple priorities: adaptation priority, 100% renewable energy priority, oceans priority. When the call is made, how do we take this priority for a submission? For that, we will have to do a costed plan, and from the costed plan, we have to go even more detail to design the project, which province, which community, how many direct beneficiaries, how many indirect beneficiaries, and then we submit. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. Your submission has been extremely helpful. I second what Honorable Virendra Lal said, that you can be rest assured that we definitely support the our participation in the Pacific Resilience Facility. So with that, PS and Denzel, I don't think there are any other comments or questions from the committee, and we thank you for your time today. Thank you.